I smiled when my son told me I probably shouldn't come up to the cabin for the family Christmas trip. I smiled, then less than an hour later, I canceled 3 auto payments. Their mountain cabin mortgage, the lease on their shiny SUV, and half a semester's tuition at the fancy prep school for my grandson. By the time New Year's snow settled over Bozeman, Montana, Samantha, my daughter-in-law, and the self-appointed director of this little family stage play, would suddenly realize her invisible producer was gone. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name's Harold Kincaid. I'm a veteran. Used to own a small auto shop off Main Street, and I know what an empty fuel tank sounds like. Silence carries better in an empty space. Dad, it's nothing personal, Andrew said, staring at the dark reflection in the cafe window. Outside, December air bit at your face, and even the grocery store parking lot smelled like pine. The ski trip's just Samantha's family tradition. They keep it to a small circle. That small circle was paid for with my signature on a line of credit. I glanced at his brand new backcountry boots, the ones I hunted down on clearance while he was on a work call. Next to them, a puffy coat that could handle any blizzard, just not awkwardness. Phil and Linda will be there, he added, swallowing hard. They're particular about the atmosphere. No loud stories, nothing you know. His voice trailed off into his coffee cup. Oh, I knew. I've been watching for years while Samantha built the illusion of our new life. Big sky chalet, stone countertops like sheets of ice, crystal stemware too delicate for a dishwasher. I'd been the one funding that illusion, not because they begged. Because when my son said, Dad, we're in deep and we thought, I remembered his tiny fingers clinging to my jacket on his first winter hike. Snow was up to his ankles, but back then, he wasn't embarrassed to be seen with me. Of course, I said evenly. I won't come. Samantha's smile looked like someone closing a drawer on something they didn't want anyone to see. Her perfume smelled like dry champagne and white pepper. She touched my arm, light as a snowflake. You're the best, Harold. We'll get together after the holidays. Maybe brunch in town. I nodded and walked out. Snow crunched under my boots like sandpaper. The sky hung low, the mountains pressing in like they were listening. I climbed into my old Silverado, ran my hand over the cracked dash, scars I could trust, and turned the key. The lifter tick reminded me, machines are more honest than people. At home, I didn't turn on the lights. The kitchen smelled of the fresh wreath I bought for myself and the faint metallic heat of old radiators. I pulled a long manila folder from the drawer, as long as a Montana highway. Receipts, bank statements, unmarked thank yous, mortgage Brooks/Andrew, lease Ridgeline, deposit Gallatin Prep. Every line another stitch, sewing my wallet into their curated lifestyle. I called the bank. Mr. Kincaid, how can we help you today? The rep's voice was professionally warm. I want to cancel 3 auto payments. Immediately, clicking keys, measured politeness. To confirm, the Saddle Creek mortgage, the vehicle lease, and the tuition payment to Gallatin Prep? That's right. Done. Effective today. Anything else? That's enough. I hung up and just listened. The silence in my house stretched out, cracked its back, and sat down across from me. I poured myself black coffee, no cream, no sugar, and for the first time in years, the bitterness tasted like medicine instead of punishment. A notification lit my phone. Bozeman Daily. Storm front moving in by weekend. Snow. Perfect. Small town, fast rumors. And a blizzard makes the best backdrop when reputations get shattered. I scrolled through Samantha's feed. Branded skis by the fireplace. Captions like our traditions, our home, our circle. In one photo, those delicate crystal glasses, the kind she treats like children, caught shadows that looked like tiny storms. The phone rang. Samantha's name. I let buzz 3 times before picking up. Harold, quick favor. My parents fly in tomorrow around noon. Andrew slammed with work. The shuttle to resort shut down for the storm. Could you run them up? You're the best snow driver we know. I took a sip of cooling coffee, looking out at the first lazy flakes drifting past the window. Of course, I said. Happy to. What flight? Delta from Denver. I'll text the details. Oh, wear that blue parka. Dad likes when things look put together. Got it, I said. See you tomorrow. When I hung up, I kept the phone in my hand until it was warm, like a stone by a fire. The folder waited on the table. The forecast was set. The snow was coming. All that was left was to see how loud the glass would break when I hit it, not with my fist, but with the truth. By noon the next day, Bozeman's winter had its claws in the valley. Snow came in sideways, wind pushing it down Main like someone was sweeping the town clean. I sat in my recliner with a mug of Earl Grey. Boots off, the Sunday paper spread across my lap. The crossword was done, the sports section folded. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Samantha, I let it ring out. 20 minutes later, another call, a text. Harold, where you? They're at baggage claim. I set the phone face down. I could picture it. Phil and Linda Brooks, standing by Carousel 3 with their high-end luggage, bundled in coats worth more than my truck, scanning the crowd for the man they decided wasn't the right fit for their holiday. Another buzz. Another text. I didn't read it. By 2:45, the storm was in full swing. Fat flakes plastered my windows. My phone had racked up 6 missed calls. I'd made another pot of tea and started cleaning out the junk drawer, the one stuffed with old keys, dead batteries, and manuals for appliances I no longer owned. It was amazing how much you could get done when you weren't racing, to please people who treated you like the help. At 3:30, the call stopped. Then came a knock at the door. Not just a knock, pounding. The kind that rattles a frame and shouts, "We're here," whether you like it or not. I set down my mug, walked slow to the door. The pounding grew harder. Through the peephole, I saw 3 figures hunched against the wind. I opened the door, and Phil Brooks was right there, red-faced and already yelling. "What the hell is wrong with you?" He pushed past me like he owned the place. We waited over 3 hours at that airport in a blizzard. Linda swept in next, her perfectly coiffed hair now a mess, lips pressed in enough to disappear. This is beyond rude, Harold. Unacceptable. Samantha followed last, her designer coat wrinkled, makeup smudged, eyes flashing with fury. "You humiliated us. Do you realize what you've done? My parents had to take a taxi in this weather because you... Get out of my house." My voice cut through theirs like a cold knife. They froze. Phil's jaw worked, but no words came out for a second. "Excuse me. This is my house. You're not welcome here. Now leave." Linda stepped forward, her voice dripping with that country club condescension she perfected over decades. "You clearly don't understand who you're talking to. My husband has connections. This," I said, holding her gaze, "is a lesson about arrogance, about thinking you can treat people like garbage because they don't fit your little social bubble." Samantha's mouth opened. "A lesson? Who do you think you are? I'm the guy who stopped being your bank account and your chauffeur." I stepped aside and pointed at the open door. Lesson's over. Phil jabbed a finger at my chest, leaning in. "You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. People remember stunts like this. People talk." I smiled just enough to show teeth. "Oh, I'm counting on it." They finally filed out, but not before Phil turned back at the threshold. "You'll regret this, Harold. I guarantee it." The door shut with a solid click of the deadbolt. Outside, the wind howled, snow piling on her SUV as they fumbled to get in. Inside, the air felt lighter, cleaner. That peace lasted exactly 3 days. On the morning of December 21st, I poured my first cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the Bozeman Daily. There, on page 2, was my face, a headshot pull from my old shop's website, under a headline that made my stomach go cold. "Bozeman man abandons elderly couple in holiday blizzard." The photo was bad. The story was worse. The article read like a hit job. Prominent local couple Phil and Linda Brooks were left stranded at Bozeman Yellowstone International Airport for over 3 hours during a dangerous winter storm when their family member, Harold Kincaid, failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. Dangerous winter storm. It had been 32 degrees and calm. We called repeatedly, Phil told the reporter, but Mr. Kincaid never answered. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in treacherous conditions. At our age, this kind of treatment is not only inconsiderate, it's unsafe. The rest painted me as some bitter, erratic old man whose behavior had been concerning for months. Not one mention of the 5 years of mortgage payments, the SUV lease, the school tuition, not a single line about the invitation. I never got to the family Christmas trip. I set my coffee down and read it again, then a third time. Same byline. Local features writer, probably someone who'd never met me. The source? Easy to guess. Phil Brooks wasn't just some retiree. He'd sat on enough nonprofit boards and golfed with enough bankers to make a story appear exactly where it could do the most damage. Bozeman isn't a big city. People read the local paper. Stories like this stick. And in a place where a reputation is currency, they can bankrupt you faster than any foreclosure notice. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt something else. Something sharper. Respect. Phil played this move clean and fast. He'd underestimated me once. He wouldn't get the chance again. I shut the paper and opened my laptop. Social media profiles, public property records, charity newsletters. The Brooks family had left a digital trail a mile wide. Samantha's Instagram was a catalog of my money, ski trips, kitchen remodels, the handcrafted furniture I paid for, captioned with our hard work paying off. Phil's LinkedIn showed the connection I needed. 3 mutual contacts with the Bozeman Daily's managing editor. No coincidence. This was coordinated. I started a new document. Dates, dollar amounts, photos, receipts. A neat, chronological package of every cent I'd sunk into their lifestyle. The more I typed, the lighter I felt. On the calendar, I circled December 24th in red. Not because it was Christmas, because it was the day Phil and Linda Brooks were hosting their annual holiday brunch. The one Samantha had been bragging about for weeks. Their friends, their neighbors, their circle. By the time I was done, I have something to put in each guest's hand that would make that perfect little circle implode from the inside. I shut the laptop, looked out at the snow still drifting over town, and smiled. They'd started this in public. I was going to finish it there. The next 3 days, my dining room turned into a war room. I laid everything out on the table. Bank statements stacked by year, each monthly payment to their mortgage highlighted in neon yellow. Receipts for the SUV lease. Tuition invoices from Gallatin Prep. Photos from Samantha's feed printed in glossy color. Her wearing the designer ski jacket I'd paid for. Their cozy chalet kitchen with the granite countertops I'd financed. Vacation shots from Aspen tagged #grateful. Each image, each number, each date was a bullet in the magazine I was loading. I made 12 identical packets, one for every seat at their holiday brunch table. Each packet started with the bank records, then the receipts, then the photos, and on top, clipped in bold red, a printed copy of the Bozeman Daily article with my handwritten notes in the margins. Lie next to Phil's storm quote, false next to Linda's unsafe conditions. Every page told a real story, and when you put them together, it was a sledgehammer. By the time I finished, my printer was out of ink, my fingers were smudged with toner, and I'd burned through an entire pack of red pens. I slid the stacks into my old leather briefcase, the one I used to carry contracts for my shop. December 24th came cold and bright, sun flashing off the snowbanks. I put on my best suit, navy blue, pressed sharp, the one I'd worn to my wife's funeral. This was a different kind of goodbye. At 11:30 a.m., I parked a block from their chalet in Big Sky. Cars lined the driveway in the street, late model Autos, Subarus with ski racks, a gleaming Tesla. Through the big picture windows, I saw them moving around the long dining table. People laughing, raising glasses. Samantha, in a red dress, moving between guests like a TV hostess. Perfect. I waited until 11:45, late enough that everyone would be seated, plates full, conversations flowing. Then I walked up the shovel path, boots crunching on the packed snow. The front door was unlocked, of course. Samantha loved bragging about how safe the neighborhood was. The warmth hit me first. Then the smell, rosemary, roasted meat, something sweet baking. Conversations hummed from the dining room. I stepped into the doorway, and a dozen heads turned. For 3 long seconds, nobody said a word. Then Samantha's smile froze, glass halfway to her lips. "Harold, what are you doing here?" I set my briefcase on the sideboard, snapped the brass clasps open, and looked her right in the eye. "I thought we'd tell your guests the real holiday story." The dining room went dead quiet. Forks hovered midair. Wine glasses paused halfway to mouths. 12 pairs of eyes darted between me, the briefcase, and Samantha's paling face. "Harold, this is completely inappropriate," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut crystal. "You need to leave. Now." "Actually," I said, pulling out the first neatly bound packet, "I think everyone here deserves to know who really paid for this beautiful brunch, this house, this life you've been showing off." A silver-haired man at the far end of the table tilted his head. "What's he talking about, Sam?" Samantha forced a laugh. "He's confused. But I was already moving around the table, setting a packet in front of each guest. "Bank statements," I said calmly. 5 years of mortgage payments. $2,800 every month, straight from my account to theirs. Receipts for renovations, appliances, furniture, even the tuition for little Mason's private school. All paid for by me. The only sound was the soft shuffle of paper as guests started flipping through the pages. Brows furrowed, eyes narrowed. A woman halfway down the table frowned. "Samantha, is this true?" "It's complicated," she stammered. "Harold offered to help us." "Offered?" I cut in. "Or did you ask?" Over and over. And when I finally stopped, you ran to the Bozeman Daily and painted me as some senile old crank who abandoned elderly tourists in a blizzard. Gasps. Every head swiveled toward Phil and Linda, who suddenly looked like they'd swallowed ice water. "That's not how it," Phil began, but I held up a hand and dropped a copy of the article in front of him. My notes in red were loud on the page. "Lie. False. Misleading. Funny thing about that storm you mentioned," I said, meeting his eyes. "Weather reports show it was 32 degrees and calm. No blizzard. No danger. Just an inconvenient truth you didn't want in the story. That you cut me out of this holiday because I wasn't the right fit for your crowd." A low murmur rippled through the room. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Phil's jaw clenched. Linda wouldn't look up. Samantha's hands were white-knuckled around her wine glass. "You used my money, my name, and then you used the paper to try to destroy me." I said, "I'm just returning the favor in front of the people whose opinions you value most." The man at the end of the table closed his packet and looked straight at Phil. "Is any of this wrong?" Phil's lips parted, but no words came. And that's when the front door swung open behind me. I turned and froze. It wasn't another brunch guest. It was someone I hadn't seen in 8 years. Every eye in the room turned toward the doorway. Standing there, framed by the bright winter light, was my son, Andrew. The last time I'd seen him was at a 4th of July barbecue years ago, before Samantha's parents had fully tightened their grip. Back then he'd still laughed at my corny jokes, still called me Dad, without that guarded look. Now he stood in an expensive ski jacket, cheeks wind-burned, and for the first time in a long time he looked older than me. "Andrew?" Samantha's voice was high, brittle. "What are you doing here? I thought you were picking up more champagne." "I was," he said, his gaze locked on the packet spread across the table. "But I got a text from a friend who works at the paper. Said there was a brunch going on up here and that my dad might be about to blow the roof off it." The room was dead silent, except for the faint hum of the oven in the kitchen. Andrew stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His boots left wet prints on the hardwood as he walked over to the table, picked up one of the packets, and flipped through it, page after page. The mortgage highlights, the tuition receipts, my red scrawls across Phil's quotes in the article. He stopped, thumb resting on a photo of Samantha in the new kitchen, the caption reading #blessed. "This true?" he asked her. Samantha's jaw moved, but nothing came out. Phil jumped in. "It's exaggerated, twisted to make us look." "To make you look?" Andrew's voice cut sharp. You let me believe Dad was just bitter, that he was making trouble for no reason, all while he was paying for this entire life you've been parading around. I watched his face, that slow shift from confusion to realization to something harder. The room's air felt heavier with each second. Linda tried to reclaim control, leaning forward. Andrew, sit down. We can discuss this after. No! He set the packet back down, deliberately. We're going to discuss it now. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd turn and stand beside me. But instead, he turned his back to me, facing the guests. I'm sorry you had to see this, he said, his voice low but steady. This is complicated. My father isn't telling you everything. My jaw tightened. What exactly am I leaving out, son? He didn't answer me. He looked at Samantha. She looked back, and something unspoken passed between them. And then Andrew reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. He laid it flat on the table, right on top of my packet, and slid it toward me. Before you decide how this ends, Dad, he said quietly, you need to read this. The seal was already broken. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint ticking of the old wall clock over the buffet. I slid the envelope toward me, my fingertips brushing its edge. Andrew didn't break eye contact. The seal was already torn. Whatever was inside had been read before it got to me. I pulled the flap open, careful, slow, because I wanted him to feel every second stretch. Inside was a single sheet of heavy paper. Letterhead from Gallatin First Bank. My stomach tightened. I knew that logo. It was the bank that held their mortgage. I started reading. The words blurred for a moment, then sharpened into something that made my pulse kick. Notice of intent to foreclose. The numbers were brutal. 3 months past due, over $12,000 owed, plus penalties. 14 days to bring the account current, or the bank would initiate proceedings. I looked up at Andrew. So, this is what you wanted me to see? That you can't make your payments without me? He didn't flinch. No. I wanted you to see what happens if you go through with this little public stunt. We're already on the edge. You humiliate us here, in front of everyone, and the fallout will push us over. And it won't just be us. It'll hit Mason, too. Samantha's eyes darted around the table, scanning the guests, probably weighing how much damage had already been done in the last 10 minutes. Phil sat rigid, jaw tight, while Linda's lips were pressed so thin they looked painted on. You think I'm bluffing? Andrew said, you think they won't print another story? About how their own father destroyed his son's family on Christmas Eve. It was a move straight from Phil's playbook. Turn the focus, shift the guilt, wrap it in concern for a child, and make me the villain twice over. I set the letter down on the table. You've had years to think about how to treat me with respect, and this is what you come up with. Andrew's voice dropped. I'm trying to keep my family from falling apart. Your family? I asked. Or your lifestyle? He didn't answer. I could feel the guests shifting uncomfortably in their chairs. They were watching something they hadn't expected. Not just me versus a Brooks family, but a father and son in open conflict. I picked the letter back up and folded it in half. My hands were steady. My voice was even. If you think this piece of paper changes anything about what I came here to do, you're wrong. Andrew took a step closer, his tone turning sharp. Then you're going to regret it. And that's when my phone, sitting in my jacket pocket, started to ring. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. It wasn't the paper. It wasn't the bank. It was someone who should have been dead. I stared at the name glowing on my phone screen, my mind grinding gears. Mark Danner. 10 years ago, Mark had been my business partner. 5 years ago, he'd vanished after gutting our shop's accounts and leaving me to clean up the mess. Last I'd heard, he'd skipped town and disappeared into some shady operation in Arizona. The man was a ghost, and now he was calling me on Christmas Eve in the middle of my payback. Every eye in the room was on me. I stepped back from the table, the phone still buzzing in my palm, and walked into the hallway. I swiped to answer. Well, I'll be damned. Mark's voice came through, smooth as used motor oil. You still pick up for me. That's almost touching, Harold. What do you want? My tone came out flat, But inside, my heartbeat was hammering. "I hear you've been busy," he said. "Word travels fast in little towns, even from 1,000 miles away. Sounds like you're making enemies out of all the right people." "This isn't a good time," I said. "That's why I called now," he replied, a smile audible in his voice. "I'm in Bozeman. Got in this morning. And I have something you're going to want to see. Something about our old friends at Gallatin First Bank and the Brooks family." My grip tightened. "You've been digging around in my business?" Let's just say I stumble on something while minding my own. Phil Brooks isn't exactly subtle when he's moving money around. And Harold, he let the pause stretch. "You're not the only one they've been playing." I glanced toward the dining room. Through the archway, I could see Samantha whispering furiously to Phil, Andrew with his head bowed like he was trying to disappear. The guests were picking through the packets, some glaring, some whispering. My moment was still hanging in the air, waiting for me to either drive the knife in or walk away. "Where are you?" I asked. "Downtown. Rusty Spur Tavern. Back booth. This better not be one of your games." "Trust me," he said. "If I'm right, you're going to wish you'd brought this to the paper yourself." I ended the call, my mind pulling in two directions. My plan was here now in that dining room. But if Mark had something real, it could be the difference between payback and obliteration. I took a step toward the hallway closet to grab my coat, and that's when I heard it. The sharp crack of breaking glass in the dining room, followed by Samantha's scream. I was halfway to the closet when the scream tore through the house. It was high and sharp, the kind that yanks every nerve taut. I spun and rushed back to the dining room. Guests were on their feet, chairs knocked askew. A jagged mess of crystal stemware lay scattered across the floor, one glass still spinning in place. Red wine had splashed across the white linen tablecloth, bleeding into Samantha's dress like an open wound. Phil was standing, chest heaving, his hand still clenched around the neck of a wine bottle. Andrew had his palm up between them, as if trying to keep the air from catching fire. "What the hell is going on?" I barked. No one answered right away. Then one of the guests, the silver-haired man who questioned Samantha earlier, spoke. "Your son's wife just tried to grab the packet out of my hands." Phil here didn't appreciate me calling him a fraud. Samantha was trembling, eyes darting between me and the mess on the table. They were twisting everything, making it look like we... "You mean like you actually did?" The silver-haired man cut in. Phil slammed the bottle down hard enough to make another glass tip over. "We are not doing this circus act in my home." "Your home," I said, stepping forward. "Check the deed. My name's been paying for this roof since the day you moved in." A murmur swept through the room. Some guests looked ready to leave. Others couldn't look away. The brunch had turned into bloodsport. Andrew's voice cracked like a whip. "Enough. All of you." He turned to me. "Dad, just go. Please. You've made your point. Don't burn this whole thing down." "Son," I said, my voice low. The fire was here long before I walked in. Samantha made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. "And you're loving every second of it, aren't you?" Watching us squirm. "You don't care what happens to Mason." I took a step toward her, slow, measured. "Don't you dare use him as a shield for your lies." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't move. That's when I noticed Linda, standing by the sideboard, slipping something into her handbag. It was subtle, quick, but I caught the glint of glossy paper. I crossed the room in 3 strides and caught her wrist before she could zip the bag. "What's this?" I asked, pulling the packet free. Not one of mine. This was heavier, thicker. A file folder with the Gallatin First Bank logo stamped in the corner. Phil's face drained of color. "Linda." I opened the folder. Inside were documents, not copies, but originals. Account ledgers, wire transfer records, and a name I hadn't seen in years. Mark Danner. I flipped through the folder, the paper edges biting my fingertips. These weren't bank pamphlets or generic statements. They were transaction records going back 18 months, all tied to an account under a shell company name. MD Consulting LLC. Even before I saw the initials, I knew Mark Danner. My old partner had a reputation for laundering money through side businesses, But seeing his trail intertwined with Phil Brooks's accounts was like getting hit with a sledgehammer. Wire transfers in the tens of thousands. Some originating from Gallatin First Bank. Some going straight to an account in Scottsdale, Arizona. Where did you get this? I asked Linda. Her lips thinned. It's none of your concern. The hell it isn't, I said. You've been running money through Mark. My Mark, the one who tanked my shop and disappeared with our savings. Phil's voice rose, defensive and sharp. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I tossed one of the ledger sheets onto the table. The numbers screaming in black ink. These transfers? Classic Danner. He always thought he was clever splitting them into uneven amounts, so they wouldn't trigger reporting thresholds. Problem is, Mark's clever, but he's not invisible. Samantha crossed her arms, trying to project calm, but her foot was tapping. So what? You think you're some kind of detective now? I think, I said slowly, that you've been in bed financial with a man the FBI has been interested in for years. And I think you just handed me proof on a silver platter. Andrew's eyes darted between the folder and me. Dad, if you go to the cops with this, you'll drag all of us down. Maybe you should have thought of that before cozying up to a crook. I shot back. The silver-haired guest leaned forward. Is this true, Phil? You're mixed up with a money launderer? Phil's jaw worked, but he said nothing. That silence was as good as an admission. I closed the folder and slipped it under my arm. I was going to walk out of here satisfied with exposing you to your little social circle. But this changes everything. Phil's voice dropped to a growl. You don't know what you're getting into. Oh, I know exactly what I'm getting into, I said, moving toward the door. I was 3 steps from leaving when my phone buzzed in my pocket again. I pulled it out, already guessing who it was. Mark Danner. This time, just one line in the text. Don't trust anyone in that room, not even your son. I didn't answer Mark's text. I just slipped the phone back into my pocket, keeping my expression neutral. The last thing I wanted was for Phil, Linda, or Samantha to see that they'd just been demoted from my primary threat list. I think we're done here, I said, opening the door. The blast of cold mountain air cleared my head. Enjoy the rest of your brunch. I walked to my truck without looking back. Snow crunched under my boots, each step pulling me further away from the heated whispers spilling out of their picture-perfect chalet. 15 minutes later, I was pushing through the door of the Rusty Spur Tavern. Dim light, smell of stale beer and fried food, country song low on the jukebox. In the back booth, Mark Danner sat like he'd never left town. Same slick hair, same shark grin. Well, hell, he said, standing halfway to shake my hand. Harold Kincaid in the flesh. I slid into the booth instead. You've got 2 minutes. Start talking. Mark leaned back, studying me, always a polite one. Fine. The Brooks family has been laundering campaign donations through Gallatin First for years. Phil needed a front, someone the bank wouldn't flag. Guess who came highly recommended from a certain ex-business partner of yours? You're telling me you brought them to the bank? He shrugged. It was mutually beneficial. They needed clean-looking money. I needed someone to move it. But lately, Phil's been getting greedy. Moving bigger sums faster. If the feds haven't noticed yet, they will soon. And when they do, I'm not going down alone. I studied his face. Mark was a liar by trade, but this was too detailed to be pure fiction. Why tell me? Because, he said, leaning forward, you've got something to want, that folder, and I've got something you want, the full paper trail. Together, we bury them before they bury us. I laughed, short and sharp. You think I'm teaming up with the guy who gutted my business? I think you want revenge more than you want pride. His eyes gleamed. And I think you know they'd throw you under the bus in a heartbeat. Hell, they already tried. I didn't answer. My coffee arrived, black and steaming. I took a sip, letting the bitterness settle. Mark slid an envelope across the table. This is just a taste. You want the rest, we make a deal. Tonight. I opened it. Inside were photocopies, wire transfers, emails, even a memo with Phil Brooks' signature proving consulting fees to MD Consulting LLC. The dates matched transactions in Linda's folder. This enough to put them away? I asked. Mark's grin widened. With what you've got, it's enough to end them completely. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Mark. It was Andrew. Dad, you need to get out of town. Now. I stare at Andrew's text, my thumb hovering over the screen. No punctuation, no explanation, just urgency. Mark kept talking, but his words blurred behind the weight of that message. You gonna answer that? He asked. I pocketed the phone. Not here. Mark smirked. Suit yourself. But whatever's got your kids spooked, odds are connected to them, not me. I slid out of the booth. We'll talk later. Outside, the cold hit me like a slap. Snow was coming down harder now, the kind that sticks to your coat and doesn't let go. I ducked into my truck and called Andrew. He picked up on the first ring. Dad, listen, they know about Mark. All of it. They think you're working with him to blackmail them. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. They're half right. This isn't funny, Andrew said. Phil's already making calls. He's spinning it, so you look like the mastermind. Money laundering, fraud, everything. By the time he's done, you'll be the one the cops come for. I felt the gears shifting in my head. How would he even... Because he's got a friend at the sheriff's office. Andrew cut in. And that friend's on his way to your place right now with a warrant. Dad, you can't be there when they arrive. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 3:42 p.m. If Andrew was telling the truth, I had less than an hour before my front door came off the hinges. Why are you warning me? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Because you're still my father. And Mason doesn't deserve to watch you get hauled off in handcuffs. That hit somewhere I wasn't ready for. But I couldn't afford to dwell on it. All right, I need a place to hole up. Andrew hesitated. There's a cabin north of Highlight I use for hunting trips. No one else knows about it. I'll text you the coordinates. Don't tell anyone where I am. I said, I won't. We hung up. A moment later, the text came through with a set of GPS coordinates. I started the engine, the Silverado's tires crunching over the packed snow as I pulled onto Main. Halfway to the highway, headlights flared in my rearview mirror. Too close, too bright. A black SUV. It stayed with me through 2 turns, matching every lane change. My gut told me this wasn't some tourist trying to get to the ski lodge. I pushed the gas, the old truck growling as we picked up speed. The SUV followed. When I hit the outskirts of town, it surged forward, pulling alongside. Tinted windows. No plates on the front. The passenger window rolled down. A man leaned out, ski mask, no expression visible. And in his gloved hands, something long and black glinted under the streetlights. It wasn't a camera. The moment I saw the barrel glint in the streetlight, instinct kicked in. I yanked the wheel hard right, the Silverado's tires biting into the icy shoulder. A split second later, a sharp pop cracked through the night, followed by the windshield spiderwebbing just above the steering column. I didn't wait for a second shot. My foot slammed the accelerator, the truck fishtailing before catching traction again. The SUV swerved to block me, but I jerked left, skidding back onto the main road. Snow flurries flashed through the headlights like white sparks. Another pop. This time, the side mirror exploded in a spray of glass. Whoever was in that SUV wasn't bluffing. I scanned for an out. No traffic, no open businesses, just dark houses and the occasional porch light glowing through the storm. The GPS coordinates to Andrew's cabin were still on my dash, but heading straight there now would be like drawing them a map. I needed to lose them first. Up ahead, the road split. Left toward the highway, right toward the old logging roads and the foothills. I cut the wheel right without braking, feeling the back end of the Silverado slide out. The SUV followed, its engine growling low and mean. The logging road was half-plowed, half-packed snow. Trees closing on both sides, their black trunks flashing past in my peripheral vision. I killed my headlights for a few seconds, letting the truck become just another shadow in the storm. The SUV's light stayed on me. I spotted a narrow turnout just ahead, more of a snow-covered ditch than a pull-off. At the last second, I cut hard into it, killing the engine and lights in one motion. The truck shuddered to a stop behind a low ridge of snow. Through the rear window, I watched the SUV roar past, its taillights vanishing into the white. I waited. 1 minute. 2. The only sound was the tick of cooling metal. I started the engine again, slow, letting the noise blend with the wind. My plan was to double back toward town, take the long route to Highlight. That's when my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A new message, unknown number. You're running the wrong way. We can see you. I looked up. Through the swirling snow, about 50 yards ahead, 2 figures stood in the middle of the road. Dark coats, motionless, and between them, the black SUV was parked sideways across my path, engine idling, exhaust curling like smoke from a gun. I eased the truck to a crawl, tires crunching over the snowpack. My eyes locked on the 2 figures ahead. Their silhouettes were solid, broad-shouldered, and completely unbothered by the blizzard whipping around us. The SUV between them idled low, its headlights cutting white tunnels through the storm. I kept my hands on the wheel, but let my right drift down to the floorboard, where I kept an old tire iron wedge between the seat and door. Not much against a gun, but better than bare knuckles. One of the figures took a step forward, lifting a gloved hand. Not a wave, a command to stop. I rolled the window down a few inches, cold air flooding the cab. You boys lost. I called out. The man closest to me stepped into the beams of my headlights. Ski mask, dark jacket with a faint outline of a shoulder holster beneath. Mr. Kincaid, he said, his voice muffled but firm. You're coming with us. Yeah, I said. And if I don't feel like it? The second man reached into his coat and produced something I recognized instantly. Not a gun, but a worn leather folder I'd taken from Linda Brooks's bag. My pulse spiked. That doesn't belong to you. It's evidence, the first man said evenly. Dangerous evidence. Our employers would like to make sure it doesn't get misinterpreted. Your employers being the Brooks family. I guessed. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, mind racing. If they had the folder, that meant someone had been close enough to my truck while I'd been inside the rusty spur, close enough to lift it without me noticing. That someone had to know exactly where I parked. Mark Danner's smirk flashed in my head. You've got 30 seconds, the man said, to step out of the vehicle and come with us. No folder, no fuss. You get to walk away. And if I say no? The second man smiled. I couldn't see it, but I heard it in his voice. Then we make sure you can't say anything at all. I glanced past him at the SUV, calculating angles, traction, whether I could punch through the snowbank and get around them before they put holes in me. Risky, but sitting still wasn't an option. The man with the folder started walking toward my door, slow and deliberate, like he was already sure of the ending. I dropped my hand to the gear shift, ready to slam it into reverse. That's when another set of headlights appeared behind me, cutting through the snow, growing brighter fast. Whoever it was, they weren't slowing down. The glare from behind swallowed my mirrors. I barely had time to slam my foot on the brake before the new vehicle, a dark pickup, barreled into the scene. Snow fanned out in a blinding spray as the truck fishtailed, straightening at the last second and stopping broadside between me and the masked men. The driver's door flew open. A figure jumped out, bundled in a heavy parka. Hood up, face obscured. Without a word, they leveled a shotgun toward the men blocking the road. Drop the folder, the newcomer barked. The voice, deep, roughened by cold, carried enough authority to slice through the wind. The man holding Linda's folder froze mid-step. His partner shifted like he might reach for something under his jacket, but the newcomer racked the shotgun, and that metallic clack made a decision for him. Both men backed toward their SUV. Now, get in and go, the newcomer ordered. Unless you want your employer to be shopping for new muscle in the morning. They obeyed. The SUV's tires spun before biting into the snow, fishtailing away until the red taillights vanished into the storm. The newcomer lowered the shotgun, but didn't put away. Slowly, they turned toward me and pulled back the hood. Andrew, you're welcome, he said, breathing hard. What the hell are you doing here? I snapped. I followed you. Didn't trust you to actually go to the cabin. And you just happened to bring a 12 gauge? He shrugged. Figured I might need it. I stared at him, the wind tugging at our words. They had the folder. How did you know? Because, Andrew said, his voice tightening, I told them where to find it. The world seemed to tilt under my boots. You what? I thought if they got the folder back, they'd back off. No cops, no trouble for Mason. But they weren't supposed to come after you. My fingers curled into fists. You sold me out. He met my glare, unflinching. I made a bad call, but I'm here now. And if you still want to take down the Brooks family, I'm in. I opened my mouth to tell him exactly where he could shove that offer. But before I could, a low rumble cut through the wind. Headlights appeared again from the direction the SUV had gone. Only this time there were 3 sets, all coming straight for us. The 3 sets of headlights grew larger, brighter, until the snow was nothing but white glare. Engines roared in unison, a pack moving as one. Andrew gripped the shotgun tighter, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. Get in the truck, I told him. They'll box us in. That's the idea. The first SUV screeched to a stop 10 yards out. Doors flew open. Men poured into the road, black coats, ski masks, pistols drawn. The Brooks family hadn't sent a warning. They'd sent an execution. Phil himself stepped out of the middle vehicle. No mask, just that smug country club confidence I'd hated for years. His breath clouded the air as he walked toward us. Harold, you just couldn't let it go. I stepped away from my truck. Folder in one hand, the other raised halfway. You've been laundering money with a man the feds already have on their radar. And I've got every shred of proof in here. I held the folder up. But you already know that, don't you? Phil's smile thinned. You won't be holding it much longer. That's when a 4th set of lights appeared behind his convoy. Red and blue. Sirens cut through the wind. Phil's head whipped around. What the... From the lead cruiser, 2 deputies emerged, followed by a tall man in a heavy parka. Mark Danner, hands cuffed in front of him, grinning like he'd just sold the winning lottery ticket. One of the deputies shouted, Drop your weapons. Phil's men hesitated, long enough for the rest of the sheriff's units to fan out. Engines idling, doors slamming. Within seconds, the mass muscle were disarmed and on their knees in the snow. I glanced at Andrew. You called them? He shook his head. Mark spoke up. That would be me. Decided I liked your ending better than mine. He looked at Phil, told him everything. Accounts, transfers, names. Phil lunged toward him, but a deputy shoved him back. I stepped closer, Phil, so only he could hear me over commotion. You used my money, my name, and tried to bury me. Now you're the one in the hole. His jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Linda and Samantha were pulled from the vehicles, faces pale under the flashing lights. The deputies read charges: fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. As they were loaded into the cruisers, I turned to Andrew. You coming with me? He looked toward the Brooks family, then back at me. Yeah, I think I've had enough of their table. The snow kept falling as the last of them were driven away, red and blue lights fading into the dark. I stood there a long moment, the cold biting through my coat, the folder still in my hand. For the first time in years, the weight on my shoulders was gone. Some debts you collect in cash. Others you collect in silence, watching justice finally, irrevocably close at hand. And this one was paid in full. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.